Buon pomeriggio.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Policy for Health and Well-being Technology Innovation session. My name is Lydia Alessio-Vernì and I'm Director of the Agenzia Lavoro e Sviluppo Impresa of the region Friuli Venezia Giulia. And before introducing our session, I'd like to introduce to you my co-chair, Nadio Delai. He is co-chairing this very interesting session with me and is currently president of the Ermenea Studi and Strategie di Sistema, a company that he funded, and he carries out research studies for both private and public actors. I will then introduce all participants in this session. And by way of a small introduction, and I'm setting my watch on my cell phone so that I keep to the time I've been allotted. By way of an introduction, I'd like to say that the issue of policies has to do with the future. It is a topic of vision, of possibilities, possibility to predict what is going to be most useful for the future. And here we're dealing with a very sensitive topic for our country and for the whole world. We're dealing with a pandemic. We're dealing with health and well-being. From this viewpoint, now I represent the Agenzia Lavoro e Sviluppo Impresa, which is an entity set up by the regional government with three purposes: to attract investments, so I can present companies that wish to settle here our opportunities in this very advanced sector, which is health and well-being, offering companies that are already here new investment instruments that may be somehow neglected. And the third mission that we have, and the third mission of my agency is that of being a tool for the regional government to develop certain policies. And the most important of these policies is the smart technology policy. And there we have launched a process that should allow us to find out the strength of our region, and which should help us to decide where research for science and technological innovation should lead us. And this is why we have focused in particular to smart health. But my agency is not a scientific organization. My entity does not enter into the scientific details of these technologies. We work together with the regional government to develop policies. We sit all the stakeholders around the table, and with them we try and list all the necessary steps necessary for our policies. This has been our core business, and this is going to be our business for all the sectors that are of interest for our region. With this very qualified panel today on health and well-being technology innovation, we thought, together with Nadio Delai, on the reason why we have all policies represented here today. We have those who write these policies at European level, and we have Antonello Pezzini, a representative of the Industrial Association at the European Economic and Social Committee in Brussels. we have an example of policy implementation that will be discussed by Karina Firkavičiūtė from the European Commission, and then we will have a specific focus on other regions and domains. The possibility to use technological utilities to implement certain policies, because policies are not just visions. Policies then have to be implemented. I'd like to give very briefly the floor to my co-chair. No. Let's start. It will Nadio Delai will also focus on the dangers of a proliferation of policies, but he will touch upon that at the end of the session. Now, I'd like to give the floor right away to Karina Firkavičiūtė. She is Policy Officer at the European Commission. Welcome, Karina. Welcome to our session. And she will tell us about the opportunities offered by the program on the European Space for Research, which is a program developed by the European Union. It is being implemented. It comprises various opportunities. So you have the floor, Karina.
Hello, good afternoon. I hope you can hear me. I am pleased to be here to represent the European Commission. However, I am talking about a very particular part of the of the policy on behalf of the European Commission, namely that is dedicated to the widening participation and strengthening the European research area angle. And I understand this is in a very interesting way relevant to Trieste, to your region, as you situate yourself on the border with various countries. So you want to play a role of bridging, of creating bridges to other countries, to your potential partners. So these tools that I will be describing today are most relevant for this kind of activities. I hope you can find it useful. And of course, my presentation is a very short one. You can then, if interested, go and have a look into the participant and tenders portal in the European Commission just to have more information on that. But I find it important just to give you a hint, some digested information on what's possible under the new program that was launched very recently. So, as you might know, Horizon Europe has three main pillars, but today we are talking, and my presentation is about this red part that is called widening participation and strengthening the era. We call it a transversal part of the Horizon Europe. It doesn't have any number, but it's a transversal pillar, which means that it is relevant to all the other pillars. However, it is important to point from the very start, it is not thematic related. So all those points, all those calls and topics are so-called bottom-up, and they are not related to any particular topic, neither for any health or bio issues that you are specifically discussing today. However, they are applicable, they can be relevant under this part, but not for the thematic. However, with the mainly pointing out on certain aspects of these calls and not the thematic itself. So the entire transversal part is split into two pillars. One is more concentrating on so-called widening aspects, so widening participation and spreading excellence, and another one about the reforming and enhancing the European Union research and innovation system. There are quite many calls and topics under each of these parts. You can see here a rough estimation of the budget that can be dedicated to both parts. I will go a little bit into the detail of both of them, so you can have a more or less understanding what is it all about. So if we go into that left pillar, which is called widening actions, so dedicated actions dedicated to widening participation, is mainly for those countries that are, as we say and we see the situation, are weaker in participating in the so-called normal Horizon Europe collaborative projects. So they would need a certain help or fostering their abilities of administrating the proposals, but also abilities to get into certain partnerships, to get known, to have abilities to build consortia, to do things internationally or within the Europe with partners. So these are all actions that would facilitate these capacities, which means these are the so-called support activities, support for countries, support for management, for institutions. Those actions are encouraging certain reforms and changes in particular countries that are the target group. They are designed so that the participating countries and institutions would be able to afterwards to build the necessary or be better at building the necessary research and innovation capacity, also at expanding their transnational collaboration scale, and also, which is the main goal, so making their research and innovation systems stronger, so that after those actions have finished and after they had this experience, these or several of the actions, they would go to normal collaborative projects and would compete on an equal footing with all the other partners coming both from European Union and outside. The only issue here in these actions is that the main target audience here and the main eligible countries, meaning those countries that can be hosting the coordinators, are the so-called widening countries. So EU 13 countries, Portugal, Greece, also associated countries to the Horizon Europe, certain associated countries that are corresponding in their economic and research activities to those widening countries within the EU. And also the novelty of Horizon Europe is that also European Union outermost regions are also eligible to these calls. So I understand Italy is not among those eligible countries. However, in many of those calls, the main applicant, the main coordinator, is requested, and it is obligatory to have partners from so-called advanced countries or advanced and leading institutions from at least different countries than the countries of applicants. So here, Italy can really find its way of building partnerships if you consider yourself and want to trigger those bridging actions, especially with the Western Balkan countries, also your neighboring European Union countries. So here you might find your role as partners involving yourself into this call. So they are not research actions per se, mostly all of them are coordination and support actions. However, several of them allow now a certain small research component within the actions. I have a very short presentation, so I won't go into each of the actions. You can find all the information in the work programs that is already out, and several calls are even closing quite soon. However, I just would like to draw your attention to some of maybe of bigger interest for you. As for example, there is a very new instrument within the program called Excellence Hubs, which is about the innovation ecosystem. So there is a requirement to have at least 2 innovation ecosystems within one country or several countries, even across the border. So here your interest might be to find partners across the border from various actors within a country, businesses, academia, local administration, etc. So you will find all of the requirements. And this is especially of building regional capacities and regional dimension of that possible cooperation in order to facilitate future research projects. Another one that I found maybe of interest for you is about the networks of higher education institutions and their capacity building, where again, the widening countries need certain expertise from their more advanced partners. So maybe you can find possibilities to building partnership in this context of a higher education institution. Another one that is also a little bit new for now, even it used to be under framework program 5 and 6, quite a popular measure, so-called hop-on facility, where it's about actions, different actions, again, not prescribed thematically under the Pillar 2. So those consortia and those projects that would be selected and eligible for funding under Pillar 2, they might, after being selected, they might talk to their partners in widening countries and might make them join, or as we say, hop on already existing project and action to come into the partnership and to contribute to the action. So this might be interesting for you as well, as you are one of the Pillar 2 actors. So if you want to engage more with your widening countries or Western Balkan countries actors under your already ongoing projects, you can use this tool. It is up to each thematic to organize the calls, and a certain additional financing is dedicated to these actions. Another one specific on also Western Balkans, even the deadline is already of the 5th of October, so it's closing very, very soon. Maybe not any longer to do anything because it's really very short, but just for you to know, this is a twinning action, so a usual twinning action from previous program. So for widening country to have at least another 2 partners from leading research institutions. This time it was dedicated to this one for 5th of October exclusively to Western Balkan countries, or maybe some of your institutions will already participate into that. However, for the next year, there will be a topic so-called normal twinning. So without any geographical restriction, so you can use this if you would be interested. Of course, the same proposal that was submitted to Western Balkans cannot be duplicated to another competition and application. And another instrument that will be much more active this time under Horizon Europe is the National Contact Point Network. That might be interesting for you as mainly a very important source of information on what possibilities, which angles, how to look partners. So everything needs to be in hands of those national contact points that are appointed by national administration. And all of them will have certain people that would work with this part of Horizon Europe. So you might contact them and get a certain information. The important point here is to say that they will build a network, meaning they would have a specific platform to exchange information, to share best practices, to see what is the need, to look for help, to ask questions, analyze, organize different seminars, etc. And this was something that was asked previously by various applicants and stakeholders, and this time we respond with this new network. So might be also very useful to see for you. Well, all the central information should be in the hands of the national contact points. And now, very briefly, if to turn to the right part of that transversal pillar, just to say that here, under these actions that are dedicated to reforming and enhancing the European research and innovation system, they are mainly also not thematically bound, so all the bottom up. However, here there is no restriction as for eligibility, so all countries can participate. It depends on which calls you would choose. The participants can be of this or that kind, so you will see what are the rules. However, those 4 parts here, they talk about this new rebuilt European research area that is focusing on prioritizing investments and reforms, so various instruments that can support this angle. Also, the one of improving access to excellence, various instruments for networking and training research managers. The third one is about translating research and innovation results into economic value. So all kinds of actions that might be interesting for you in this regard, innovation scoreboard, industrial technology roadmaps. And the number 4 is about precisely deepening the ERA, so the European research area, and various potential ways how and which topics, which fields can be covered here. So this is very briefly for your information what this part is about. And as I mentioned, you will find more information under the Horizon Europe participants and funding and tenders portal. That's a new name for now. Also, you are more than welcome to turn to your national contact points and ask for more information. And of course, the European Commission also has a so-called research inquiry system that gives you a possibility to put a question and to get the answer in some days of a specific question, mainly related to the preparation of your call or any other question you might have. So thank you very much for the moment. I don't know if you plan some questions, or if not, I would be happy to answer them if they come later per email or some additional information needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina Firkavičiūtė. It was very, very interesting to listen from you to this important program. I would like to ask you if you can tell us just in a few words the most important innovation that this new program has, as even a procedural innovation or something that really, really can make it even easier to use it especially for the companies, the smart companies.
Do you mean for the users, or you mean from the policy perspective?
From the user's perspective.
The users, I think, this program uses absolutely the same rules and evaluation criteria as the main Horizon Europe program, so nothing is specific for this part. Mm-hmm. So all those features that you have for whatever call under Pillar 1 or Pillar 2 or Pillar 3, they would be absolutely relevant to these calls as well. So anyway, it is much simpler now to apply. There is no negotiation anymore. There is a shorter time for applicant to get the answer. The evaluation system is much simpler as well, concentrating on the main evaluation criteria. However, this part it doesn't have anything specific in this regard for the applicants.
Thank you, Karina. Adesso dunque la parola sarebbe andata.
Actually, we should give the floor now to Amadou Ndiaye, a specialist physician now in charge of the Abbas Ndao Hospital in Senegal, but he sent us a message. Due to the COVID pandemic, he could not be here with us, and he can't be here with us remotely right now. So, for technical reasons, we can share with you a short speech from Dr. Amadou Ndiaye. And the participants of EuroBioHighTech will find his longer contribution on the platform. I'll ask our technicians to show us this short speech, and I think it is very interesting for us to hear from other regions and from other continents.
È un istituto di sanità pubblica di livello 3. Occupa un posto.
Possiamo rimetterlo dall'inizio che l'audio non è, almeno noi qui in sala non l'abbiamo sentito.
Can we restart the video because we were not able to hear anything at all?
Posto importante nel sistema sanitario nazionale. Buongiorno signori, sono il direttore, Dr. Amadou Ndiaye del Senegal. Il centro ospedaliero Amadou è un istituto di sanità pubblica di livello 3. Occupa un posto importante nel sistema sanitario nazionale per la sua posizione geografica e la diversità delle sue attività. Ospedale dispone di servizi di riferimento come il centro diabetico Marc Sancalè, l'oftalmologia, centro di riferimento nella zona UEMOA, il laboratorio di analisi che ha vinto Oscar nazionale per la qualità e presso UEMOA, il centro materno-infantile, maternità, più pediatria, neonatologia, la chirurgia, l'urologia, odontoiatria, la cardiologia, un centro di cure epidemiologiche, un servizio di accoglienza e pronto soccorso. Recentemente ristrutturato, il centro ospedaliero Amadou mira a rafforzare la capacità di accoglienza dei rifugi del centro Marc Sancalè di cardiologia e gastroenterologia per il ricovero, garantendo cura di qualità alla popolazione. Grazie signori.
Ecco, ringraziamo per questo contributo che ci è stato inviato.
This is the video that was sent to us, and the second will be made available for the participants and would be an in-depth presentation on how the COVID health crisis was managed and future investments in public health which are foreseen in Senegal. We believe that it's paramount nowadays to not limit ourselves to our continent and our country. I'm now going to give the floor to Giorgio Paolucci, who is the Scientific Chief Officer for Lettra Syncotrone, and I'm going to ask him to describe what is a research infrastructure as excellent as the one he is managing. What can it mean in terms of updating the public policies, what is represented in this emergency, and what was given during the emergency? And what is the capacity to attract research capabilities on behalf of many countries that use it? Good afternoon. It is a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you for the invitation. As mentioned, Electra is a research facility. For those of you who are not used to the term, research infrastructure is cumulative technologies that are rendered available for applied and industrial sectors. Electra is a light beam lab, which is a particular type of radiomagnetic radiation which is applied in various fields. It is applied in basic research, but also applied research, and this is a bit the key of these centers. We have been working to eliminate the idea that it's a particle accelerator, it's only for physics experts. it's a sort of burden that we have to bear with. It's a research center, interdisciplinary one, which looks at the study of various samples. I talk about isolated atoms, and in the past was looked after by industries in the region for innovative drugs, for the study of materials of various kind. To just give you an example, it was used to study the coloration of tissues, something that you wouldn't think about. And it's part of our job to offer ourselves for basic and industrial research. Given our successes, I know it's not beautiful to brag, but we have been working on renewing our infrastructure. We are building a new ring which will be ready when I retire, but this is something, a little detail that is of no interest to anyone, that will be even more at the vanguard. And we are following through various projects. We are looking at the study of microlesions in the lungs. This is a project that was created by interacting with a well-known pneumologist in Catinara. We wanted to see what are the lesions from asbestos, which is an important problem in this area. This project was created in 2017, and now it is evolving to include microlesions coming from COVID. The cyclotron light beam has some characteristics that allows it to identify features that you can't see with normal measurements. It's not always easy to work with companies because a common language must be found. Sometimes we can manage, sometimes we don't. In this, policymakers, such as public institutions, should give a helping hand to find common language, so as to understand that we have opportunities for both parties. We learn from the interactions with companies, and we take what we learn from the interaction back to basic research in a sort of virtuous cycle, which is called in general the cycle of innovation. COVID has had a huge impact on our activities. For example, we used to operate live in presence, a person who had to measure basic research, but I would say overall industrial research, wanted to be in presence, and secondly because they want to have privacy on their research. This was reduced, if not hindered, in the COVID period. We exploited this opportunity to work remotely, sometimes with great success. and in others with great difficulty. And slowly we are opening up and going back to normal life. Even if we have very careful to use the technologies that we developed. COVID has given a push to the light beam technology on imaging of lung tissue. We are working on lung tissue from various fragments of virus, studied virus proteins, and in this way we try to give our small or big contribution to knowledge and to improving the development of society. I think this covers more or less our contribution for the policies. COVID is one example, but we have many others. I gave you just a few of them because I've been talking for a little bit more for 8 minutes, and I don't want to go beyond the allotted time. Thank you. I'm here if you have any questions. I'm looking in the room for questions from those who are watching us. So you are facing a variety of stakeholders. And these people that you are in a dialogue with, these interlocutors, have they been eager to chat back? Because sometimes, if policies are too strict, or they need too many steps in order to be adequately updated, immediate action is prevented when the context changes rapidly, as it does in an emergency situation. Indeed. Unfortunately, generally speaking, we have some standards according to ideas that we have or laws that have been issued. And in a crisis, we need to quickly, and I underline quickly, change them. Completely different example that has... Will we ever manage with the current rules to spend the funds for recovery and resilience? We are talking about an emergency situation. We have been working on this for 2 years, and we need to spend a great amount of money. I deal with RUP calls, so I know what public tenders are all about. And my question is, will we be able to manage? Okay, I believe this example has covered everything. If I may add, before giving the floor to Jerry Krattiger, who is the Managing Director of the Freiburg Development Agency in Switzerland. If I may, this is a session devoted to policies, and their activation, their implementation is the most important part, the procedures, the practices that need to be followed in order to follow through with a certain policy. This must be then discussed in our final meeting. I'm going to give the floor to Jerry Krattiger, who couldn't participate in a pre-session, and I'm going to invite him to bring his contribution on this topic.
Guardo la regia con speranza. Perfetto, aspettiamo ancora un attimino che si ricolleghi. Vuoi che facciamo un cambio di ordine? Se vediamo per... Nadio, se vuoi, invertiamo l'ordine. Allora, intanto che ripristiniamo il collegamento, facciamo...
While we are trying to connect with our speaker, I give the floor to Nadio Delai for his contribution inside the panel. The microphone is not on. The microphone of the speaker is not on. I'm sorry. Oh, now it is. For many years, I've been working in this domain, and I find many old problems and mechanisms that are still valid today. In the 10 minutes at my disposal, I'd like to touch very rapidly upon 4 points. First of all, clearly, today we are part of a movement society rather than an order society. And the divide line came with the euro, and we realized that with the introduction of the euro, everyone was trembling. And now the two crises have completely changed our perspectives, and we are called upon to change what we are doing and who we are, whether we are research institution, university, local administration, individual citizens. We are all called upon to change what we're doing. And this is also a reason why there are so many uncertainties and doubts. And we should bear in mind that we need not just new skills for new things, but we have to be able to reinterpret the heritage that we already have. If I think about Trieste, you have many accomplishments that you have achieved in the field of research, and you have to reinterpret the whole of that heritage. And I'm also referring to the local companies. They have to be reinterpreted, and the same holds true for universities and research institutions. And in this reinterpretation exercise, we are changing the respective identities. If we want to build a new world, we have to have a new identity for the future. An identity looking at the past is a museum exhibit. An identity for the future is life, is dynamicity. Of course, I have a long heritage behind me. I have to reinterpret that heritage and move on. And this reinterpretation exercise is an ability that this area has. If I take a picture of this region, I can say that the region has a lot of heritage, but its dynamic organization does not reflect that heritage. Secondly, Trieste is a proliferating area when it comes to research. Proliferation in a positive way, and this is quite unusual on the Italian scenario. And we also have an unexpected, surprising proliferation of companies in the bio-high-tech domain. Not 5 companies, but quite a few hundreds of them. It's not that there is only international research. The region has been able to promote the setting up of these companies, many of them startups. So Trieste is doing quite well. Where's the criticality? Those who are politicians, I mean, politicians know where the criticality lies. Mission number 1 accomplished, more or less. Mission 2 of the university, more or less accomplished. Mission number 3 is just on paper. And there are some universities that have really been working very well, but mission number 3 is still very far away. We are far from achieving it, and it is something not in line with the typical university mentality. So research and innovation is underused, it is hard, it's difficult. When the university turns to companies but has no right mindset, you have to have a different mindset to address companies. It is difficult everywhere, not just in Trieste. But you really have so much research, and you have a very interesting proliferation in terms of companies. How can you combine university research and companies? And thirdly, the research heritage that you have and the wealth in researchers shows that there is another problem. We have been very good in Italy, and Trieste is no exception. We've been very good at promoting startups and the setting up of companies. Now you have a very important scientific park. Now you call them hub, then you call them accelerators, then you call them local agencies for the development, then you have national agencies for development. If I make a list of all these entities, well, it's a huge number of agencies, and there is then a third level. And which is this third level? After so much proliferation of agencies, now I'm being very concise, but this is indeed my view. And then you have a third level. You have agency trying to coordinate all those proliferating agencies. So you have a first level service with research institutions and companies on the other. And you have the so-called beacon hubs and science parks. Sometimes you have the living dead, as it were, but then we have a coordination of all those proliferating agencies promoting development and innovations and so on and so forth, which is complicated, of course. Too many actors. This is a very complex situation, because to become operational, to turn ideas into products, prototypes, in companies that can then industrialize that product and are able to sell, this is a completely different language. And this is a problem. This is a real problem everywhere, not just here. And the solution is not easy. This is my fourth point. I'm talking to you because you have a major asset in terms of research, but this is true for the whole of our country. We do need to be pragmatic. We need to leverage innovation. We don't need a financial leverage, we need a leverage of innovation. If I take into account what happens in our economy, I see that all these entities, leaving aside the third level entities that are coordinating and no one wants them, they're completely useless. But in the face of the proliferation of so many agencies, we see that there are attempts to join companies and research, and it is universities, agencies, scientific parks then try vertically to reach down to companies. And universities have been main actors with many problems, because the problems are that when you want to valorize a patent developed by a university, you need to have a special authorization, but this is an authorization, you're not selling the patent. So the university, even if it has developed a beautiful idea, it has not so much money, and this is still a problem, patenting by university. And then you have the horizontal approach, so you just don't have a vertical leverage. The National Plan for Resilience and Recovery will fund many activities. Let's hope that we can get some money. But then you have the horizontal leverage. What is this horizontal leverage? This is the leverage exerted by quick-minded companies that understand that there are new industries here, and they go out and buy them. I mean, the backbone of our country are small and medium-sized companies. They are very flexible. They can be handled more easily, and they are bound to where they were set up. Usually, these entrepreneurs love the area where they are headquartered, and these larger companies can become tutors of small and medium-sized companies. There are average-sized companies who have bought quite a few companies. Others have bought 52 in between 2015 and 2021. That may be an exaggeration, but an acquisition of 5 or 6 companies, that's reasonable, because the larger company understands that there's innovation, that there is a potential market. This type of coaching by larger companies is the horizontal dimension. And this is an horizontal dimension of tech transfer. You possibly remember the title by Schraff. It was really a turning point for economics. So this horizontal leverage is the production of companies by companies with the help of finance, of course. This morning, for the 3rd year in a row, have repeated that wide economy is going well. You tend to earn more when the situation is better. In other words, I mean, the average companies have to be involved, the average size company. If I were to suggest you what you should be doing is to manage your heritage. It's all very well with so many agencies and centers that you have here, but we know how public administrations work. There is bureaucracy, there are problems, there are criticalities, and you still succeed, and that's the vertical leverage. But I'd like to see here 3, 4 average-sized entrepreneurs playing this game. Maybe some devoting more to IT, others on biomolecular medicines, other again on services to the final users, because as the population is aging, we will have new needs coming up. So there are these 2 leverages. And then the partnership between private and public partners, this is also to be recommended. You have the vertical approach, you have your horizontal one, and then there can be a partnership, an alliance between the private and the public actors. However, this is what we should be doing. My message, therefore, is that this intertwining should be further developed in order to assist the National Plan for Resilience and Recovery, because this plan is based on 3 prerequisites, and one is often neglected, and it has to do with the private sectors. First of all, the plan says we need projects, we have to accept them, and then you have to comply with the deadlines that you have indicated, otherwise you won't get any money. And maybe this is the hidden hope of our northern neighbors in Europe. The second prerequisite is that if you don't introduce reforms in your systems which ensure the correct use of the money, you're not going to receive any money. So the two things are interconnected. It is two prerequisites that have to be met. And then there is a third prerequisite. You have to involve private stakeholders, because it is private stakeholders who have to be the main actors. It is not just the state that will build all the roads that are necessary. So it is private actors that have to be involved. And if you play this game vertically and horizontally, the second leverage is of great relevance. Average-sized companies. I've been working for years within industrial associations at all levels. And we need to understand that average-sized companies are important. I've discussed so many times within the industrial association. The industrial associations are invaded, flooded with small-sized companies because they need services. Large companies tend to be neglected because they move outside Italy, but the 20,000 average-sized company, and 5,000 of them are well-known, they are really the backbone of our country. If foreign entrepreneurs here, loving the region they're in, start playing this game, I think we can help the public sector as well. And then we might also have interesting alliances between the private and the public sectors. In particular, this applies to the EuroBioHighTech, but I could say that for the shipbuilding, for agriculture, it doesn't change. We need the action and the participation of private companies. So let's make them play. You have exceeded actually the time you had available. But I was able to say what I wanted to say. I will make up for the delay at the end. Well, certainly this is very stimulating what you just said, especially as I am the general director of an agency that is doing what you said, though in a different way. So very stimulating and also interesting hints for a debate. I hope that we are connected now with Jerry Krattiger. The floor is yours.
Thank you for having me. I'm really sorry, even though Italian is a national language of Switzerland, this is a language I don't master, so I'll do my presentation in English. So again, thank you for having me. Maybe just as a quick introduction in terms as to to give it a bit of a framework as to my intervention. The presentation that I am giving gives really the perspective of a local government. As you know, Switzerland is a federal system with a lot of power that is devolved to the cantons. And what you have to bear in mind is that the presentation that I will give you is that of a territory of 325,000 inhabitants, but that just gives you an inroad and basically a view or an in-depth view as to what is happening in Switzerland regarding innovation and innovation policy. So very clearly, compared to the presentation of Karina Firkavičiūtė, this is a perspective from a national government and not from the EU, and even deeper so or more so a local government with quite a bit of power and latitude. The other thing that I wanted to highlight as to my role as director of the Fribourg Development Agency, my role is to ensure that the environment or the business environment in which companies from the private sector evolve are as beneficial as possible, and that we foster innovation as much as possible. Also, Giorgio Paolucci mentioned COVID in terms of research stream. In terms of economic policy, what I want to highlight is also that my team, during the whole time that we were working in the COVID context, we did a lot of work in terms of stimuli packages and emergency support for the economy. So these are parallel worlds, but just to give you a perspective in terms of the support we gave to the economy, and some of them were actually research and development grant, in the sense that instead of having companies sending their research and development teams back home on a furlough system, we made sure that these people could continue to do research and development during that time. And just to give you some perspective in terms of the money that was injected during the past 18 months in the local economy, that was roughly €1 billion for a GDP of 20 billion. So that gives you a little bit of a perspective of the work that we do. Now I'm just going to go into the type of work that we do and what we do to foster innovation. If we could go to the next slide, please. As Nadio Delai was mentioning before, a lot of innovation is linked to the type of territory that you're able to have under your control, and what you're able to do in terms of attractive and basically making that into a virtuous circle. So WIPO has recently come out with a study saying that Switzerland is #1 in terms of innovation, and that's been for the 11th year in a row. We're also #1 of the competitiveness index of IMD. So there are numbers of things that the government is doing at the local level that is correct. And if I may draw a parallel with the Adria region in northern Italy and the Trieste region, this is also a region in Italy that is known for being highly innovative and very, very, very creative. So we've seen that in terms of the pharma concentration, in terms of the biotech concentration. And if I go back to the role of a local government is to ensure that the framework conditions are good, that the ecosystems are good, that critical mass are actually obtained in terms of attractiveness, and that you are getting into a virtuous circle. The next slide, please. So the work that I do is anchored in a law. It's a law that is the economic promotion law of the canton of Fribourg, and what we have are like number of basic principles that govern that law. One of them is that we have to apply a very strict non-compete rule, saying that the companies that we support in our process are not going to become a competitor for a company that already exists within the territory of Fribourg or within the canton of Fribourg. The idea for us with our systems and basically our grant systems is to increase the competitiveness and to increase the local GDP. So we typically support companies that are innovative or companies that don't have a local competitor, and this support goes through the whole life cycle of the company and can be like 3 different types of support: either non-repayable grants, loans or capital, like either in the form of seed capital, and coaching. And this is for each of those steps, we have a dedicated organization that takes care of those companies and actually supports them. And basically the work that I do is to support the creation of startup companies, to also ensure that new companies come to Fribourg and establish either a factory or a new company, and also support the existing company. And then we have a whole system of collaborative projects that we support through our systems. Next slides, please. So it goes through a whole different arsenal of measures. I mean, as I mentioned, coaching is one of them. We also give grants for any new jobs that get created, financing solutions, tax incentives. Although what we are increasingly seeing is that the research partnerships and the technology platforms and the clusters that we've built are becoming the hook on how we make our ecosystem attractive and why companies should come and establish shop in Fribourg. And in terms of the R&D subsidies and the supports that we give to those mechanisms, I will give you a concrete example later on. But this is a whole, and the other thing that is important to state is that depending on the company that we're talking to, we will customize the package of support that we will give, provided that the company fulfills the criterion to be granted that help and that support. Next slide, please. Maybe a little bit of the economy of the canton of Fribourg. This is very diverse economic base that we have, but what we've noticed in terms of when we made a very thorough analysis of the economic fabric of the canton is bioeconomy accounts for 36% of the jobs and 30% of GDP, and Industry 4.0 is 12% of GDP and 8% of the jobs. And by bioeconomy we mean valorization of biomass, and this is something that goes from the production of a Gruyere cheese all the way to highly advanced molecules in biotech, and also all the topic of biosourced material that are used in construction is something that you find in the bioeconomy. So it's a fairly broad definition of what it is, but it allows us to support all the pillars of our economy. We have a fairly strong industrial base. We have also a very strong agriculture and food sector. So by going into that dimension, we're also hooking our transformation of food increasingly with biotech processes. And then when we talk about Industry 4.0, what we're looking at is clearly automation, robotization. But what we're seeing is also that when you are at the interface between these two sectors, this is where interesting things happen, where you actually have companies that are able to develop very clear market lead, and also very interesting startups that are working in this field. Next. Then the other way to make a territory attractive very clearly is also the element of sectoral clusters. So we have 3 clusters that we support, and they feed each other. They have also a clear mandate from my department to federate the actors in that field and to innovate or to foster innovation among the players of those three clusters, and also to make it more dynamic, to ensure that collaborative space are happening. And the other thing that is important, and particularly if you talk about the life science sector, are the different competence centers that we support. Some of them are linked to the University of Fribourg, some of them are linked to the Technical College or the University of Applied Science. And if I look at the first one, for instance, it's just to give you an idea of what kind of skills we're able to create and feed into the biotech sector. But we have one of Switzerland's leading training center for biofactory operators. And what we've noticed is that there is an interesting transfer of skill for people who work in the food sector to go into the biotech area, particularly in the production part of biotech. Then if we talk about advanced manufacturing, as the IPRIT Center has, there is also a clear link to health policy and also health startup, in the sense that this center has been working on numbers of projects where you're able to print live cells either on the skin of a patient or also to print organs. So if you talk about organ transplant of the future, these are interesting competencies to be had. The other centers that are mentioned, the three next ones, do not have such a large direct connection to health policy or life science, but it creates an interesting environment, and for us this works. So we have competencies in the area of polymers, in the area of IT security, and also the Smart Living Lab, which is the satellite of the École Polytechnique Fédérale of Lausanne, here based in Lausanne, that is focusing more on architectural element and basically what is going to be the future, the habitat of the future. How are we going to live 25 down the line? And then the other element that if we tie back into the health policy issue and also health innovation, we have the Swiss Integrative Center for Human Health that has been recently acquired by BioValley. And this is a center that has a lot of expertise in the area of diagnostics in terms of personalized health, and having this interaction going on between Trieste and Fribourg is also interesting for us in the sense that companies that are hosted by BioValley in Trieste can also look at Switzerland and Fribourg as the first entry market in the future. But what I'm trying to say here is that there are significant investments that are happening in, I would say, software, so to speak, to make the operating system of innovation work. And then there is also significant investment that happens in brick and mortar. So this part is more content. And the next slide, if you could show it, please. We'll show you the type of brick and mortar that we have and also how public and private partnership can work. Here, what you have highlighted and shown are different science parks that we have, and each of them has a very specific flavor that ties into our economic development strategy, focusing on bioeconomy and Industry 4.0. And if you look at the Agrico site, that is dedicated purely to agri-food and valorization of biomass, but also what we increasingly see in that space are links with nutritions, also precision fermentation, how this can evolve into new types of food. Then Blue Factory is the place where the satellite of the EPFL is located. It's on the site of an old brewery, and it's interesting to see how those sites change and have a history. But there we have definitely a clear link with habitat of the future, or the built environment of the future, and human health. I mean, that is the site that is dedicated to this element. Le Vivier is another site, another science park, which is privately held, that will be more focused in automation and robotization, so clear Industry 4.0 flavor. And then another one that is privately held is the Marley Innovation Center, which is specialized in the area of fine chemicals and digital printing and coating, so advanced manufacturing in a way. And then what we also have had, and this is again in terms of the role of the state, is not to become to supersede itself towards against private actors. But what we have done, I mean, some of the sites have been companies that decided to delocate or to relocate or to cease their activities, and there was nobody who wanted to acquire those sites, and the state went in and purchased them and basically made them available for future development. And this is, I think, where the state can play an active role in shaping innovation policy and economic development policy, and this is an interplay with the private sector. The next one, please. What we've also invested heavily in, and this is so far some 50 plus projects that are ongoing, but we've developed a strong competency in the canton of Fribourg by using federal systems. I mean, fairly similar to what Karina was describing before, but at the national level. And what we've been able to do was to by investing some money from the canton into collaborative projects, we're able to attract federal funding, and actually getting together different actors, be in different fields, in different areas, coming together and having a collaborative project leads us or enables us to foster innovation in the canton. And this is something where we have a dedicated organization that does that, builds this project, and actually supports them in their deployment. And this is always a partnership between the private sector and some of the universities, either the University of Fribourg or the University of Applied Sciences. Next slide. What we also have, which is at the federal level, is our federal agency for innovation, which has also a large amount of funding. And then there is a competition that happens at the cantonal level on how you're able to attract that type of funding. Which kind of projects are you able to get? Are you able to build a national competence center of national relevance in the canton, for instance? We've done that in nanotech. We've also been able to attract an end-to-end booster in the area of food, which is a system that that works with open innovation. So this is where I see my role as a go-between, and actually someone who supports this interaction between the cantonal and the federal government, and how to access this grant system. What we also have behind InnoSwiss is also a full-fledged network international of Swiss innovation consulates. I mean, they're called Swiss Next, and they're located in all the places in the world that are where something very active is happening in the area or in the field of innovation. Next slide, please. This is a very concrete example on how we finance a research and development project. So you will have one company and an implementation partner. So for instance, a University for Applied Sciences. And then there is an R&D project that is set up, that has been approved by the federal agency, by InnoSwiss. And this means that there is typically 50% of the cost is covered in cash by the federal government. And then the company will have to come up for half of it on its own. And then in order to foster innovation, what we've done is that we've complemented the 300,000 francs grant of InnoSwiss, going up to 100,000 Swiss francs. That can be in cash. Oh, no, sorry, that went too fast. That can be in cash, but that can also compensate some of the contribution in kind of the company. And typically projects like that can lead to design of new orthopedic devices, can also lead to development of superfood and the analysis of their health impact. So there we have a large scope of projects, typically because our ecosystem has a lot of industry, particularly in the plastic and the metallurgical or the machine industry. We've had also a lot of projects that were market innovations in that field. And then the next field that I have, the next slide, please. I think if you reflect on any kind of innovation policy, it has also it has always to be done in synergy and also to the benefit of the local economic tissue. And there, what you have there are some, big names of companies that are established in the canton of Fribourg. A number of them are in the health sector, but there is also like a whole array of small and medium-sized enterprises that are also benefiting from the support measures that I've just described.
Thank you.
This,
Thank you, Jerry. This is very detailed presentation of all those opportunities and what your agency is now looking for new investments and also empowering innovation in your region. And so thank you. Do la parola adesso a Antonello Pezzini.
I'm giving the floor now to Antonello Pezzini, who is a member of the European Economic and Social Community and a representative of Confindustria, and also an expert for the Minister of Ecological Transition on the topic of energy efficiency. We are a bit late, but the content was extraordinarily interesting. And this topic is by an agency that works in our field with a very similar scope. Antonello Pezzini will help us close the circle with the beginning of a policy that looks at the important role of partnerships, consulting constantly the representatives of various sectors and of companies. Our question is, tell us, what are you working on? Something you mentioned in the previous days, and what does it mean to be part of this partnership? So having an impact on choices that then go on to impact companies. How can you be objective when you participate in processes that are highly formal? My congratulations for this important initiative. Partnerships are important to orient the Commission in its decisions. And here in Brussels, we have a partnership within the stakeholders, the interested parties at the social level. That means Confindustria and unions, and also associations for trade, and everything else gravitates around our development. I sent you an 8-9 pages of a draft to help you save time. It's 3:30. I'm going to stop in 10 minutes. I am developing the issue of energy with Cingolani in Rome. I'm also developing the topic of a new strategy at industrial level, which will be the suit of the Green Deal in Europe, and an update has been published on the 5th of this year, 2021. A new industrial strategy which analyzes 14 ecosystems in Europe, general ecosystems, or aerospace, defense, where we have been working greatly, agriculture, food industry, culture, digital, electrochemical industry, energy. We have 3,000 in Italy and 1,300 in Italy. The new strategy in healthcare, which is very interesting for you and what you are doing there in Trieste, and mobility and transport, safety, and well-being and tourism. Out of the 14 strategies, health is something I will discuss upon. What Europe suggests, but I can show you paragraph 350 and the two annexes, which are part of the Green Deal, which has 40 publications that supported the Recovery and Resilience Plan. that I will come back to. The second is we underline that in healthcare we don't have strategic materials which are needed for all the medical devices. Then we need to increase the pace of research in drug research. We saw an instance during the pandemic, intellectual property, to make them clear so that people can patent and move on. Another item that is very interesting for you in Trieste and who are working with Brava and his activities is AI tools, which are becoming ever more important for the concept of predictability, which we need to have in healthcare. For example, in the field that we are dealing with today, but also in economy, technology, the predictability of damages that can take place, and it's part of that resilience, the capacity to react to what is happening in the hydrogeological sector, which becomes easier if we have predictability tools, digital tools, which are important, and then the market for electrical and medical tools. Healthcare issues, the consumer rights, because they need to have equal rights. We can't go on with, I don't know, medical exams or surgery. I have to wait for months. Healthcare must be public, but also private. We heard it before. We have to push towards the private sector, but not because the public sector doesn't have the money. We have to be smart enough to check the private sector and make it work, because the private sector must give jobs through continuous evaluation and assessment. The digital medical architecture, and all of these are in the national plan for recovery and resilience. 15 billion euros are dedicated. This is the funds that were dedicated in our mission. M2 has different numbers, but the 15 billion are dedicated to healthcare. You said earlier that is very important. When we talk about recovery, the economic states, the smart states who don't have unemployment because they have been smart enough to follow European directives, and they contribute to them and intervene in creating jobs. But the states that are not smart enough will have youth unemployment because they do not implement directives in development, trade, and so they are still, they have outdated, obsolete legislation. The renewable law that has not been transferred in Italy is blocking us, because if there is no legal framework that allows us to invest in renewable energy, because we haven't the 2001 law that has to be adapted in our legal framework, we cannot have it in our national plan. That means understanding and studying in depth the topic of health care. You might, if you think about training in developing competences for people who work in healthcare, and all those institutions, management training you have, I work on the ecological transition, but I can give you some data on health. We have 1,400,000 for all of these courses and trainings. There are 2 billion which have been allocated, 4 billion for telemedicine, for elderly homes, 2,270,000,000, 280 million 1 million for telemedicine and chronic patients, 1 billion for community hospitals, and so on and so forth. So what is highly important is to read these things and start adopting them. Why? I will speak about the premises. The states who have been frugal and have low taxation, but not because they are dumping, because they have fewer expensive for politics like compared to Italy, and hence lower taxation. Okay, let's give Italy the money, 200 billion. It will spend 30 or 35%. The structural fund experience shows that spending money well is difficult because you need commitment, culture, you need to study things. If people don't study the national plan, and we are going all over again through the healthcare system reform, which has already been done in the past. Rampa, the subsecretary, carried out the reform, and Russo, who carried out the healthcare reform, and many others, which are contained in the national plan. I will conclude here. Nowadays, we're going to jump forward towards informatization, telemedicine, predictability, and biomedical research, professional competence, all things that you are already experimenting with in Trieste. But it's not enough to do it in Trieste because you're good at it. You have to extend it. You have to study thoroughly the national plan. You have 640 pages. If you want, I can send it to you. The one that was approved by the EU. And there are also simpler versions. The official gazette on the 24th of September, it was published on the 229 issue, all the details on the financial research sources and the distribution, which is clearly explained, and the semester where the money is allocated. You know that if we get the money every 6 months, it means that we have committed. In that 6 months, we have to be willing with your centers, with the innovation at technological level, with the capacity to have a certain culture in Confindustria, Confintagianato, and whatever you want. With us, as we won't be able to spend because we have 24 million compared to 51 million. On the 36, we have 24 million more, and thus until the 31st of June, what we can't spend, what we can program to do, the money won't be allocated. This is the problem. So let's start working. Thank you. This is 3:41.
Grazie. Grazie davvero, davvero.
Thank you. Thank you for this final presentation. I found it really extraordinary because it brought us back to implementation, policy implementation. So really, I think each and every one of us to read the National Plan for Resilience and Recovery. There is a beautiful website, Italia Portale, with all the most recent updating and all the actions, all the missions, all the reforms that have to be implemented. I think that this is part of our cultural heritage and we must share it. It's a challenge that affects each and every one of us. We have taken up this challenge and we must meet it. I think that our panel has been really very accurate in giving an idea of the complexity of the policies and of their implementations through various stakeholders with their respective skills. There's a problem of strategies. Antonello Pezzini was reminding us of the National Plan for Resilience and Recovery, but in all regions there will be 3 major regional programs that are carried out simultaneously, each with their own strategies, each with their own policies. Some of them are really varied. In each area there will be a sustainable development policy or another policy that adds up to the previous one, and it has to be in line with the others. there will be a focus on inland areas, strategic plans for all agencies and entities. So I really share what my co-chair was saying before, that this complexity is clear, as the panel has highlighted, both in terms of content and in terms of the multiplicity of stakeholders involved. I think that today we have really been confronted with the complexity that we have to face. And it is not easy to go back to a simplification of the system. I represent a system operating within this complexity at regional level, and I believe that the problem has not so much to do with coordinating other stakeholders, but coordinating tasks. We really have to act in a focused way, working towards policy goals. But these policies have to be disseminated. We have to implement it together. We have to share these policies. I don't think that the regions mean bad, because each area has its own richness of competence centers, leading labs and resources. The IP for FVG, again, that's another platform and we have available in our region. So what is difficult is to work together sometimes. And I think this is something that we should all bear in mind. Another central topic that we have outlined is the public-private collaborations. Many problems are not merely public in nature, so we have to use the same language. I think that partnerships do play an important and valuable role, because partnerships do mediate between the language of procedures that are expert procedures and the demand coming from businesses, citizens, universities, and research centers. Our panels reminds us of the complexity and of the richness of the system we have to operate in. And this highlights the need for networking and collaborations. But we need to have the goals clear, because sometimes in between one strategy and the next one, we risk losing sight of our goals. First of all, wellness and well-being and health, but then social and environmental and economic sustainability as well. We meet again in the next panel with Nadio Delai. I think we are a bit late, but it was a very rich debate. I think that the central criticality is implementation.